What would you cook if all you had was a wartime pantry and a 1930s cookbook? Today, we're uncovering 10 forgotten American recipes, meals that once fed soldiers, factory workers, and families through blackouts, ration books, and harder times. Some are strange. Some are genius. All of them deserve a comeback. Tell me in the comments. What's the most unusual old-school dish you remember growing up? Like this video if even one dish brings back memories. Subscribe to uncover more recipes time nearly erased. Share this history. It's too tasty to forget. Now, let's slice into the next forgotten classic, frosted sandwich loaf. Frosted sandwich loaf, when lunch looked like cake. You wouldn't believe your eyes if this showed up at a family picnic today. It looks like a dessert. It cuts like a cake. But take a bite, and it's pure 1950s savory. This, my friends, is the frosted sandwich loaf, a true mid-century marvel. Layered like a party cake, but built entirely from bread, mayonnaise, and fillings, the frosted sandwich loaf was the height of home entertaining in post-war America. Picture this: slices of white sandwich bread, stacked with fillings like egg salad, ham spread, and olive cream cheese, then frosted on all sides with a whipped mayo cream cheese blend. Yes, frosted, like a birthday cake. In the 1950s and early 60s, this was what you brought to bridal showers, church potlucks, or a neighbor's housewarming. It was meant to impress. It was meant to confuse. And most of all, it was meant to show that post-war housewives had time, ingredients, and style again. But behind the charm of this culinary illusion is a much deeper story. After years of wartime rationing, the availability of processed foods, commercial bread, and refrigeration changed how Americans saw fancy food. The frosted sandwich loaf wasn't just lunch. It was a symbol that America had stepped back into comfort, color, and abundance. Some people found it terrifying. Others found it thrilling. But either way, it turned heads. Today, it's nearly vanished. Too fussy for modern life. Too weird for most restaurants. But for one golden slice of the 20th century, this sandwich cake hybrid ruled the social table. So, would you try a bite if it showed up on your table today? Let us know in the comments. And if you're loving this edible walk through history, like, share, and subscribe. Because next up, we're going to stuff hot dogs with cheese and wrap them like a gift. Stay tuned. Cheese-stuffed wieners, the party trick that time forgot. Before we judged hot dogs by Instagram filters or gourmet toppings, America had something wildly different on its dinner table. And it came piping hot from the 1950s playbook of culinary experimentation. Introducing cheese-stuffed wieners. Yes, the name says it all, but the experience? Pure mid-century magic. Here's the picture: plump, bright red wieners, sliced down the center, not quite all the way through, then packed with sharp cheddar cheese or gooey American slices. But it doesn't stop there. Each one is wrapped in a slice of bacon and secured with a toothpick like it's going into battle. The final step? Baked or broiled until the cheese bubbles and the bacon crisps to perfection. This wasn't a casual snack. It was a showstopper, a casserole-era classic meant to wow your bridge club or delight the kids at a backyard cookout. And while it may sound like pure kitsch today, back then it was proudly served on gleaming formica tables, alongside Jell-O salads and deviled eggs. The roots of this recipe go deep into America's post-war food culture. Hot dogs were cheap, abundant, and patriotic. Cheese and bacon, symbols of post-rationing indulgence. This dish shouted, "We're not surviving anymore. We're celebrating." For working-class families trying to stretch a meal and still make it fun, cheese-stuffed wieners offered just the right combo of flair and function. Easy to make, hard to forget. And let's be honest, it still looks delicious. But somewhere between the rise of low-fat diets and microwave dinners, these bacon-wrapped wonders slipped out of fashion. They became a punchline instead of a plate. Yet for many, one bite can still rewind the clock to Sunday evenings in Mom's kitchen. So what do you say? Would you dare serve this retro masterpiece at your next get-together? Tell us in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell, because the next recipe on our tab: cottage cheese and pineapple mold, the creamy crown of mid-century tables. Can you imagine a time when cottage cheese was glamorous? when molded salads were the centerpiece of a dinner table, not just a sideshow. Welcome to the weirdly wonderful world of cottage cheese and pineapple mold, a dish that once reigned supreme in post-war American households. Back in the 1950s and 60s, nothing said modern housewife excellence quite like gelatin. And not just any gelatin. We're talking savory and sweet hybrids, chilled into fancy ring molds or bundt shapes. This one combined creamy cottage cheese, crushed pineapple, a touch of mayonnaise, lemon jello, and whipped topping. The result? A cool, tangy sweet, pastel-colored crown that shimmered under the kitchen light. It wasn't just about flavor. It was about presentation. This dish told guests you had class, creativity, and a refrigerator, a real status symbol at the time. Housewives clipped this recipe from magazines like Better Homes and Gardens or pulled it straight from community cookbooks passed around like culinary scripture. At church potlucks, Tupperware parties, and bridge luncheons, this molded masterpiece sat proudly next to the meatloaf and deviled eggs. It was refreshing. It was light. And most importantly, it was different. But somewhere along the way, our taste buds shifted. Cottage cheese became a diet food. Molded salads? A punchline. Yet ask anyone who grew up in that era, and you'll see their eyes light up with memory. It wasn't just a dish, it was a moment. And maybe, just maybe, it's time for that moment to come back. So what do you think? Could the cottage cheese and pineapple mold make a comeback at your dinner table? Would your grandma be proud or horrified? Golden glow salad. When America fell in love with Jell-O again. Quick question, when was the last time you saw a salad shine? Because back in the mid-20th century, a certain dish didn't just shine, it glowed. It was called the golden glow salad. And if you were at a 1960s church supper, Easter brunch, or family potluck, there was a good chance it took center stage. Now don't let the word salad fool you. This was no lettuce bowl. Golden glow was a Jell-O-based creation, made from lemon gelatin mixed with shredded carrots and crushed pineapple. Sometimes a touch of vinegar or salt was added to balance the sweetness, giving it that unforgettable sweet savory zing. But what made it so special? For one, it looked like sunshine on a plate. Vibrant yellow, dotted with orange strands, it shimmered like stained glass in the afternoon light. For homemakers, it was a way to show off creativity and hospitality. You didn't just make golden glow, you unmolded it with pride, often onto a bed of curly lettuce leaves or in the center of a chilled platter. It wasn't just delicious, it was symbolic. It stood for modernity, for thrift, for presentation. You could stretch ingredients, feed a crowd, and still impress your in-laws. And let's be honest, kids loved it, too. It jiggled, it sparkled, and it had fruit inside. It was practically a toy you could eat. But somewhere between the 70s and 80s, Jell-O salads lost their glamour. Fresh produce took the spotlight, and molded salads became, well, weird. Still, there's a charm in this dish, a glowing reminder of an America that once found joy in gelatin. So tell me, would you try it today? Or does golden glow belong in the past? If you love food history as much as we do, hit that like button, drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe. Because next up, we're slicing into something green, wobbly, and wildly nostalgic. Pear and lime Jell-O salad, the green crown of mid-century tables. What if I told you the most elegant salad of the 1950s didn't have a single leaf of lettuce? It had pears, it had Jell-O, and it was green. Enter the pear and lime Jell-O salad, a crown jewel of post-war American dining tables, especially during holidays and bridal luncheons. This wasn't a last-minute side. This was planned presentation. Picture it, a glistening green ring mold, made from zesty lime gelatin, chilled to perfection. Suspended inside, tender slices of canned pears, their soft sweetness balancing the tartness of the lime. Sometimes, cream cheese or cottage cheese was whipped in to create a pastel cloud effect. And if the hostess was feeling extra fancy, a dollop of mayonnaise or a sprinkle of crushed nuts might sneak in. To us today, it might sound strange. But back then, this salad screamed class. In an era obsessed with domestic perfection, molded salads were modern, tidy, and just futuristic enough. Magazines praised their elegance. Cookbooks called them refreshing delights, and housewives, armed with new refrigerators and gelatin molds, felt proud placing them at the center of their tables. But it wasn't just about looks. The flavor was genuinely refreshing, a cool, sweet tart bite that complemented warm dishes beautifully. It was light enough to serve with baked ham, yet sweet enough to close a meal like dessert. As the decades passed and food trends moved toward natural, unprocessed simplicity, the lime and pear combo got pushed aside. But for those who remember, one taste brings back a flood of memories. Easter Sundays, grandmother's glass dishes, and the curious joy of watching Jell-O jiggle just right. So, would you dare bring back the green glow? Or has this gelatin gem jiggled its last? Salmon noodle ring, the fish dish that dared to be fancy. Have you ever seen pasta in the shape of a donut? What if that donut was filled with salmon, peas, and creamy sauce? Welcome to the salmon noodle ring, the 1950s attempt to turn leftovers into an edible centerpiece. At first glance, it looks like a strange experiment. But this recipe was peak innovation in the era of molded foods and budget-conscious elegance. With a post-war America trying to balance frugality and flair, dishes like this offered both inexpensive ingredients dressed up to impress. The base? Cooked egg noodles, bound together with a mixture of eggs, milk, and a hint of grated cheese, all packed into a bundt or ring mold and baked until firm. Once inverted onto a platter, the hollow center was filled with creamed salmon, usually canned, sautéed with peas, pimentos, and a touch of onion in a thick white sauce. To the modern eye, it might raise a few eyebrows. But in 1957, this was a showstopper. You'd find it at ladies' luncheons, church potlucks, or even on the fancy table during holiday meals. Its circular shape was seen as modern, orderly, and sophisticated. And best of all, you could prepare it all ahead of time. Why salmon? Because canned fish was cheap, shelf-stable, and considered healthy. During wartime rationing, Americans grew used to pantry proteins. By the 1950s, dishes like this made use of what people already had. No waste, just creativity. Today, the salmon noodle ring lives in the shadows of forgotten cookbooks, a relic of molded ambition and mid-century meal planning. But maybe, just maybe, it deserves a comeback. So tell me, would you serve this at your next dinner party, or keep it in the vault of food oddities? Creamed salmon in patty shells, when dinner came in a cup. Imagine serving dinner in a puff pastry cup. Not a dessert, a main course. In the 1940s and 50s, that was peak elegance. Enter creamed salmon in patty shells, a dish that proved canned salmon could wear a tuxedo. At its heart, this recipe was all about turning pantry staples into fine dining. The patty shells were pre-made or hand-shaped from biscuit or puff pastry dough, baked into golden, flaky vessels just waiting to be filled. And what went inside? A silky white sauce made with butter, flour, and milk, rich and velvety, blended with chunks of salmon, peas, pimentos, and a dash of onion. Served hot and bubbling, the creamed salmon filled each cup like a treasure trove. This dish didn't just feed, it presented. Housewives pulled it out for bridge clubs, anniversary dinners, or church socials. It was the kind of meal that made guests go, "Ooh, you cooked." Why the obsession with patty shells? It was a way to control portions, reduce mess, and impress all at once. You could serve one per guest on a delicate plate with a sprig of parsley, and suddenly, canned salmon became something special. The history? During World War II and the Great Depression, canned meats were essential. Post-war cookbooks transformed those utilitarian goods into prideful creations. This dish was part of that transformation, proof that you could be thrifty and fancy at the same time. Today, we're used to fast food and paper plates. But back then, even a Tuesday meal had ceremony. And dishes like creamed salmon and patty shells brought that ceremony to life. So, would you serve this at your next dinner party? Or does the idea of salmon in a pastry cup make you squirm? If this dish sparked a memory or made you curious, like this video, tap subscribe and drop a comment. What forgotten dish do you think deserves a second chance? Cabbage roll casserole, the lazy way grandma made it. Let's be honest, cabbage rolls are a labor of love. Blanch the leaves, roll the filling, line the pan just right. But in the post-war kitchen, time was tight and appetites were big. So Grandma did what only Grandma could. She made it easier, and somehow even better. Welcome to cabbage roll casserole, the one-pot shortcut that brought all the flavor of old-world Europe into American kitchens, without the elbow grease. Instead of rolling each cabbage leaf around a beef and rice filling, this Depression-era classic chopped it all up, layered it like lasagna, and baked it into a warm, bubbling miracle. Tender cabbage mingled with seasoned ground beef, cooked white rice, sweet onions, and a tangy tomato sauce, all stacked and smothered in a casserole dish. When it came out of the oven, it looked humble, but it smelled like home. This dish came from necessity. Immigrant families brought their traditional cabbage rolls from Eastern Europe, Polish galabki, Russian galitsi, Hungarian toltok kapasta, but American life didn't always allow for hours in the kitchen. Women working jobs, feeding big families, or stretching food budgets needed shortcuts. So out came the knife, down went the layers, and a new kind of comfort food was born. It became a staple in 1950s community cookbooks, often labeled as unstuffed cabbage rolls or lazy man's cabbage. But don't let the name fool you. This was a crowd pleaser. It fed a lot with a little and reheated like a dream. Some even added a handful of cheddar cheese on top in the 60s, because, well, why not? Today, when casseroles have taken a back seat to takeout, the cabbage roll casserole reminds us what made these meals magic: simplicity, thrift, and that unmistakable baked-in love. Would you try this dish today? Or have we lost the art of making something beautiful out of leftovers? Bologna cups with scrambled eggs, the breakfast nobody asked for. Now here's a breakfast that made no sense until you tasted it. Bologna cups with scrambled eggs, a dish born from war rations, frugality, and the 1950s obsession with food presentation. Yes, someone actually thought, let's shape meat into bowls and fill them with eggs. And you know what? It worked. This odd little number first popped up in post-war American cookbooks. Families had stacks of bologna in their fridge, cheap, shelf-stable, and patriotic thanks to its popularity with World War II troops. But homemakers wanted to get creative, so they sliced thick rounds of bologna, slit the edges in 4 places, and popped them in the oven or skillet. Like magic, the bologna curled into little pink cups as the fat rendered. Inside those meaty molds, a spoonful of fluffy scrambled eggs, sometimes cheesy, sometimes with green peppers, sometimes just plain. Top it with ketchup if you were bold, or serve it with toast and black coffee if you were serious. It was quirky, quick, and oddly elegant for a breakfast made from deli meat. These cups weren't just about novelty, they were practical. One slice of bologna could feed a child or stretch into a full meal with eggs and toast. For large families on tight post-war budgets, this was pure culinary ingenuity. And it made the kids smile, which is half the battle when it comes to breakfast. Some variations even turned up at church potlucks and PTA brunches, garnished with paprika or tucked into muffin tins to make a dozen at once. Today, it's all but forgotten, overshadowed by avocado toast and breakfast burritos. But the charm of bologna cups remains. They're a snapshot of an era where nothing went to waste, and every meal had a bit of imagination. Would you eat one today? Or are some recipes better left to history? During the Great Depression, creativity wasn't just encouraged, it was necessary. When apples were scarce and wallets even emptier, home cooks pulled off a culinary illusion that still shocks people today: the Ritz cracker mock apple pie. Yes, the pie with no apples at all. This bizarre yet beloved dessert made its debut in the 1930s, right off the back of a Nabisco box. Housewives were desperate to serve something that resembled classic apple pie, even if there was no fruit to be found. So Nabisco offered a solution: buttery Ritz crackers layered with sugar, lemon juice, and cinnamon, then baked under a flaky crust. The result? A shockingly convincing dupe. The crackers softened in the oven, mimicking the tender bite of cooked apples. The lemon brought that tart brightness, while the cinnamon completed the illusion. It wasn't just a clever trick, it became a small act of survival. Something that reminded families of better days, even when those days were far away. Some say it started as a marketing gimmick. But the truth is, this dessert earned its place on countless tables because it worked. It was sweet, familiar, and most importantly, possible, even in the hardest of times. This pie represents the heart of Depression-era cooking. Stretch what you have, make it feel like more, and never underestimate the power of flavor over scarcity. Today, Ritz Cracker Mock apple pie lives on in retro cookbooks and the occasional county fair, where people still bite into it skeptically and walk away stunned. So the next time you crave something sweet, ask yourself, would you dare to bake a pie with no apples and still serve it proudly? Because back then, if you could fake an apple pie with crackers and love, you weren't just feeding stomachs, you were feeding hope.